Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity. Brian Golod, I am so pleased to have you on this episode of People in Transition. I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Bob. I was looking forward to this as well and to sharing my experience, my knowledge with your audience as well.
Brian, when you were younger, what did you want to be? And I'm using air quotes here. What did you want to be when you grew up?
The first thing that comes to mind is I wanted to, and this is such a timely question, I wanted to be an astronaut, actually. If you ask me, I still want to be an astronaut. So I really hope that all these space, odyssey and traveling and tourism, I managed to not just see it from the ground, but that I managed to go to space. Now, from a more realistic standpoint, my parents, actually, for anybody who's a parent or wants to become a parent, my parents asked me at the age of 11, where do you want to study? And I basically chose the number one technical school, both middle school and high school in Argentina. For those of you who don't know me, I have an accent, a Spanish accent. I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So I chose the best school in the entire country. And I had to study for 6 months to be able to get admitted. But I wanted to actually study. What I was captivated by was music. I wanted to be a musician. But I am also very practical. And I realized that how many musicians are out there who are actually successful and able to have a good living. And I was also passionate about computers. I got my first computer at the age of 13. I was like, you know what? I wasn't a good student. So I was like, you know what? The chances of me becoming an amazing musician who can actually make a killing, it's going to be pretty tough if I don't study very much. So I'm going to actually go into computer science. And that's what I did. At the age of 13, I went into computer science, which helped me for many, many years to come.
Brian, what were the transition moments that occurred to you from that picture of yourself as a astronaut / musician / IT person as a young child to get you to where you're at today?
I love this question. I will try to be as quick as possible. So I really enjoyed computers. I started to learn how to do software development on paper. I was really into it. I brought joy to others. I helped people become more efficient with the software that I was developing. And for many years, I thought that would be my career path. And it was actually. For many, many years, it was. If I fast forward many years, I graduated computer science in high school in Argentina. Then I came to Canada when I was almost 20 years old. And I continued with computer science. I'll tell you something that for many, many years, I was afraid to share. And I hope that people appreciate this. Is the fact that I don't have a university degree. I got a similar background to like a bachelor's when I was in Argentina from my high school, because it was a technical high school with a 4-year program. but I don't have a university degree. I don't have one hanging on my wall. And this is something that I always wanted to have. Life took me through a path that I just couldn't get one, right? I dropped out from university. I didn't find it challenging enough, and it wasn't practical enough. It was too much theory for me, and I wanted more hands-on experience. And I switched over to a college degree, a college diploma, and I got a 1-year college diploma on interactive multimedia, which was a bunch of different skills to be able to do web development and audio and video and design and so on. And within a week of me actually starting, not finishing, but starting my diploma, I was hired by the government of Canada to work on their website, and I was hired by larger multinationals doing consulting and so on. So I actually never had to go back and get a degree. Now, if I fast forward even more, and this is where I love for people to get something and inspiration out of this, is that 3 years ago, I realized that I was wasting a lot of time. I don't know if it's ever happened to you with Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and maybe mobile games. I was just wasting a lot of time. I wanted to grow personally, professionally, financially. I wanted to live better and keep on growing, but I was wasting a lot of my personal time on that. And I wasn't growing. So, and at that time, I came across LinkedIn, which is where you and I met. And I came across LinkedIn and I realized, wait a second, this is not just a storage platform for my resume. There's a platform like a social media network here. And people were very encouraging of each other and inspiring. And I was like, in the rich conversations, I was like, this is where I want to be. And I guess I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome because of what I was sharing earlier about not having a degree on my wall. And instead of me talking about being in technology and everything that I knew about technology, what I started to share was my knowledge and my experience about professional development and why. I guess maybe I didn't want people to discover the fact that I didn't have a degree and potentially for this to affect my career. I don't know exactly why, but I held back on the technology side and I focused on the career development side because I also noticed that a lot of users on LinkedIn were struggling to get interviews and also offers. They just were unemployed. And I wanted to help them because since I came to Canada 17 and a half years ago, I did extremely well. I would get interviews and I would get offers. I basically started to help people for free out of my heart. I just wanted to help them get to their dream jobs. I wanted them to get the offers to get back on their feet. I started to mentor people. Every single one of the people that I met, they got back on their feet thanks to my help. The first person I met was Jean-Claude. He lives in South Africa and he was unemployed for 2 years. And I mentored him for 35 minutes. And then 2 weeks later, he became the right hand of the CEO of a multinational. And this is because of my mentorship. And that day was special to me because it was the anniversary of the passing of my dad. May he rest in peace. And because of my personality, I like to explore. I'm curious. I asked myself, were the planets aligned or I actually have a skill? I can actually help people get back on their feet. And as I was mentioning before, I started to mentor a bunch of job seekers and every single one of them got a job offer. So my wife said at some point, she came and she said, enough is enough. I moved from Miami to Toronto to be with you, to start a family. We have a daughter. And then you're working at the government of Canada again for the second time, making a really good money. We don't need all this extra stuff. Like, why stop? I was like, I can't stop. It's my purpose. I rediscovered myself. I need to help people get back on their feet. And she's like, well, if you want to continue doing that, then you have to charge for this. You have to provide it as a service and value yourself. And I hope that everybody can appreciate that. If you don't value yourself, no one else will. So that's how I got into helping professionals with their career development challenges.
Sounds to me like your wife is a great career coach as well. So good counseling there. Brian, as you mentioned, we met each other on LinkedIn, and I see that you do a lot of polling of your followers on LinkedIn. I just saw one of them, are you afraid of being rejected? And you had another one, what makes a resume worth looking at for more than 6 seconds? I'm just curious, do you have a favorite question that you've asked on LinkedIn or two? And what did you learn from the results of that poll?
Interesting. You've invited me here, and I'd love to make sure that I share something that is tangible, that other people can benefit from. I'll tell you one thing, and I'll be completely transparent with you, Bob. I like to make people think. I'm not so concerned about what the results are. I giggle at the results, right? Like I look at them once. I don't really care necessarily about what the end result is after 1 or 2 weeks when they close. But what I like is to help people think. and question things. And I'll tell you one more detail, which is important for anybody who's thinking of leveraging LinkedIn, which, by the way, LinkedIn is my absolute favorite platform, along with Clubhouse. Clubhouse is amazing as well. But LinkedIn is a gold mine for any job seeker or entrepreneur, any professional really, which we all are. LinkedIn is a gold mine. I'm not talking just about money. It's about personal, professional, and financial growth that you can have thanks to LinkedIn, as long as you use it correctly. The trick or the tip or the insight that I wanted to share with you, Bob, is that polls get a lot of exposure. When you use a poll as compared to a text post or an image post or a video post, polls get tremendous exposure. As long as you know what you're doing and as long as you manage to captivate the audience, right? If they're interested in what you're asking, then they're going to engage with it. But the exposure is astronomical comparing a poll to anything else. And the reason why I share this with you is because in order for you to grow, if you want your profile to grow on LinkedIn or on any social media network, you need views, you need exposure. The more views you have, the more people who will follow you, right? Or the more people who will like and comment on your whatever it is that you're sharing, and the more people who will follow you. So at this moment in time, at least, polls get tremendous exposure. My advice to anyone is leverage polls to the max so that you can actually grow your profiles. Now, do not skip your question. I think that my favorite question is not actually on a poll, but it's a question that you can look at it. You can watch it if you go to my profile. Right behind my image, my profile image, there is a video because I have something called creator mode, which is a special mode that I've activated. It was released by LinkedIn a few months ago. And on that mode, you can include a video right below your image or on top of your image. And basically, the question is this. Statistically speaking, we're not meant to be born. Why do I say this? Because the odds of us being born are 1 in 400 trillion. So you can look at things in one of two ways. That we were not meant to be born or that we were meant to be born. And the question is, are you making the most out of it?
And for some of my listeners, Brian has about, pretty close to 240,000 followers. So he has figured out how to captivate and cultivate that followings. What skills do you need to be effective in your career transition, Brian, do you think? And do you have any tips on how to strengthen those skills in a person?
So I'll tell you from experience, there are thousands of people who reach out to me, job seekers who reach out to me on a weekly basis. And I answer the questions just for anybody wondering. I answer, especially if you send them to me on WhatsApp, I answer them even faster. But I get messages, emails, WhatsApp messages. So I try to always get back to people. The first thing that job seekers don't realize is what they are struggling with. And how do I know this? Because they come to me and the way that they introduce themselves and the way that they articulate the problem that they have is alien to them. They don't understand. They haven't taken the time to really dissect where their challenge is. Okay? I'll be more specific about this. They tell me, Brian, I can't get a job. That's like if I was going to the doctor and I said, my body hurts. Like the doctor is going to be like, where exactly? What's happening, right? Like, can you pinpoint, like, tell me the area at least, something. What are the symptoms, right? Like, so I have to play doctor with the job seekers who come my way. So I say, okay, what are you struggling with? Are you not getting any interviews or are you unable to convert those interviews into job offers? It's typically one of those two things, nothing else. If you cannot get interviews, it's very unlikely that you're going to get job offers, right? But there are many who can actually get interviews, but they cannot get the job offers, right? So there are two different skills that they need to develop or polish to be able to tackle these challenges. If you're not getting any interviews, and you're in North America or in countries where a resume is expected to be sent, to be applied with, you have to focus on working on your resume. You have to have a resume that meets what the market is looking for and that showcases the value that you can bring to the table, how you can add value to that organization. And then if you come to the interview and you're not getting the job offer, then you have to focus on building meaningful relationships. Because there's something that is true, and you can tell me if you disagree, Bob, please, because you have tremendous experience. Your attitude is greater than your aptitude. I mean, if it was by my aptitude, maybe I would have never been employed in technology, okay? I mentioned openly before. I can't even believe that I say the things that I do now, thanks to LinkedIn and thanks to having a lot more confidence and overcoming that imposter syndrome. But if it was aptitude, I would have been compared to so many other job seekers out there. I would have never been employed in technology or gotten opportunities as a leader in technology. So it's about your attitude. It's about how you communicate, the passion that you speak with, how you build trust and rapport with the person in front of you or with all the interviewers around you throughout that hiring process. So what's super, super important is to realize that when you are, and this is something that a lot of job seekers struggle with, they come to me and they say, I go to interviews, but I don't get the offer. Do I need to work on my resume? No, your resume no longer matters. Your resume only opens the door for you to get to the interview. Once you're at the interview, what matters? I mean, they already believe that you have what it takes to be able to do the job that they're looking for, that they are expecting. Once you're at the interview, all they're looking for is that you demonstrate that passion, that attitude, that ability to build trust and rapport, that you're going to be a vitamin to that team and the organization and the stakeholders. You're really going to represent them well, and that they can feel confident in giving you the role, the responsibilities to be able to perform. So it's super, super important that you stop trying to do everything like everybody else and that you stand out. And that's my last one, that you stand out. All the other job seekers, or most of them, answer the exact same way as everybody else. They basically sound like robots. They go in and they're just interviewed, right? The interviewer starts sending them or asking them questions, right? And they ask question 1, they answer question 2, they answer question 3, they answer, and basically at the end they say, do you have any questions for us? And then some answer and some don't, right? Some have questions and some don't. By the way, you should always have questions, very specific ones. So in order for the employer to feel rushed, to feel the urgency of hiring you, you have to be different from anybody else. Because if you're just like everybody else, why are they going to rush through the process? Why are they going to choose you? They're always going to compare you to everybody else. So stand out to the point that basically they feel like there's no one else like you out there. And if I tie this back to the question that I mentioned earlier, which I didn't know it was going to happen, but about statistically speaking, were you meant to be born or not? During an interview, if you're competing with another 4 people, basically if there's 5 in total, your odds of getting selected are 20%, right? There's 1 in 5. If you stand out to the point that they cannot compare you to anybody else, basically it's a 50-50. All of a sudden, it's like a yes or a no. Either you're so amazing and they've never seen anyone like you and they absolutely love you, they fell in love with you, and they will make you the offer, or they are like, no, this guy or this girl is too much for this organization. The culture is going to clash with the way that they are. So stand out to the point that they actually choose you and they want to stop the hiring process. That's basically the 3 that I would share.
So, Brian, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about those 2 component parts, the resume and the interview. Let's start with the resume first. If after looking at hundreds, if not thousands of resumes in your career, what would your suggestion be, 2 helpful hints in terms of making a resume better and stand out to those hiring managers?
First of all, people probably know about the ATS standards. The ATS, you're not going to stand out from anybody else. Again, going back to standing out. Just by having an ATS resume or ATS compliant resume, you're not going to stand out. That's a given. You have to have an ATS compliant resume, okay? What does that ATS mean? It means that basically you're not using elements within your resume template or your resume document that can potentially break that quote-unquote robot that is trying to read the content within your document. There are certain elements such as lines, like horizontal lines, links, tables, images, that if you place them within your resume, it can stop the program, the software, from reading all the other content within. The first things first is keep your resume document simple, okay? You don't need any extra elements other than your text. If you keep it as simple text, the software will be able to read the content and then be able to rank you. There's a lot of big misconception with regards to the ATS filtering you in or out. It doesn't filter you in or out. It just ranks you higher or lower. So the more content you can actually read and assess or process, the more likely you're going to be ranked higher. The other thing that job seekers should know is that there is absolutely no need to tailor your resume for every job description. Let me pause here for a moment. And let me repeat it before I say what I'm going to say next. There's no need to tailor your resume for every single job description. Now, what I want to clarify is that you should tailor your resume for the role that you're interested in, as opposed to the organization that you're applying for. I'll give you an example. I was in technology, as I was mentioning, and I had a role as a product owner or as a business analyst, right? These are different roles, or project manager, right? When you choose a role, what you should be concerned about is looking at the market in your area. What is it that the organizations are looking for holistically? Like, let's compare 10 different organizations. What are they looking for when they're looking for someone as a product owner? And then come up with one resume that is generic yet specific for the role at hand, the one that you have decided that you want to pursue, and craft your resume for the role itself so that you can actually have one amazing resume that ranks high, that addresses what every organization is looking for, and that you can leverage to apply as soon as you see that job opening, so that you don't have to wait to get home and spend time updating it while there are another 50 to 100 to 200 people applying before you, and now you're on position number 50 or 200. Because the chances that they are going to look at your resume in position 200 are very, very slim.
Brian, let's focus now on that other component part that you talked about, which is the interview itself. And again, if you'd give a couple of tips or techniques to help make your telephone screening, maybe your Zoom screening, or your in-person interview more successful for you, what would those tips be that you'd pass on?
Amazing question. So for phone, I would say keep in mind that the person in front of you or on the other side of the line doesn't get the benefit of seeing you. So you have to accentuate everything that you do, right? So one of the tips is you have to smile. Believe it or not, when you're smiling and speaking to someone else, they can actually tell that you're smiling, right? And that makes it contagious. That energy, that vibration goes to the other side, and the other person on the other side feels more connected with you. You have to be enthusiastic. You have to be passionate about, whatever it is that you're saying. You can't just sound monotone. You have to be really into the conversation. If you want the other person to be captivated and not be thinking of the bill that they didn't pay or the kid that they didn't pick up from school while they're talking to you, you have to really engage them. And one way to engage them is with passion and enthusiasm. And make sure that you're actually standing up. When you're standing up, the way that you project your voice comes across much more differently. It comes with confidence. It comes louder, right? It comes with strength. So stand up and smile and be enthusiastic. That's on the phone. So if you're on Zoom, it's super critical. This is such a small tip, but if you don't do this, you're minimizing your chances of actually connecting with the person in front of you. Basically, what the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when they're on camera is that they are looking at the person on the other side, right? They are looking at the screen and they're looking at, the other person on video, or they're looking at themselves and how they look. And unfortunately, that prevents them from connecting with you. They need to look into your eyes. So the way to enable for this to happen is by you learning the habit of looking at the actual camera, at the lens, the lens that appears on the typically black frame of the laptop, or if you have an external camera, you're looking at the actual camera. Forget about the way that you look on the screen. You want to be looking at the camera. You want them to connect with you. Forget about you. You will be missing on the ability to connect with them, right? You will not be able to connect with them because you will be focusing on the lens of the camera. You will not be able to look at them except for the corner of your eyes, right? You will be able to see them from the side, probably see whether they are smiling or not, but you will not be able to look at them in their eyes. But you want them to look into your eyes. So focus on looking at the lens of the camera. And if you forget, one easy tip is you take a post-it note and basically you stick it behind the camera, behind the lid of your laptop, and basically you point an arrow to the lens of the computer and you put a smiley face there. That reminds you that you have to look at the camera and that you have to smile at all times, right? One more, if you don't mind, for Zoom, which is whenever you're finishing that Zoom interview, you don't end the meeting. Let them end the meeting. They may remember one more thing that they want to discuss with you. They may want to say one thing and share what the process is going to look like. You don't end that Zoom meeting. There are so many job seekers who end the meeting abruptly and they miss out on what else could have happened afterwards. Okay, so let them end the meeting. Okay, they are the hosts anyway. And lastly, and this applies to everything. I was going to say for in person, but it applies really everywhere. It's about taking control of the interview. Remember, I was telling earlier about an interview feels like they ask you a question, you answer, they ask you a question, you answer, they ask you a question, you answer, and then they ask you whether you have any questions. If you allow for that setting, for that dynamic to happen, you're doomed to fail. Don't get me wrong. You might actually get the job offer, but that's just by chance. Okay, they ended up comparing you to everybody else. Okay, you didn't stand out. You didn't make them feel comfortable. It didn't feel like you've known each other forever, which is what you need to aim to happen, to make happen. So basically, you need to take that interview and turn it into a conversation. And then after you turn it into a conversation where you both feel comfortable, where you've built trust and rapport, and you should do that from the get-go. As soon as the interview starts, that's when you should take control of the interview, okay? And basically you turn it back into an interview, but one that you control, one where you are saying where the interview is heading. If you build trust and rapport, they will actually help you ace that interview. They will want to work with you and they will do absolutely everything possible to help you succeed in the interview.
You've talked about LinkedIn and Clubhouse. How do you use those social media tools to your advantage during your transition?
At the time, Clubhouse didn't exist, so it was only LinkedIn. There are some basics that you have to take care of. The first one is, and I like to apply logic to anything that I do. And here's the thing. Most job seekers, when they submit an application, they include their name, right? And they include their phone number, email address, and their LinkedIn profile. Within the first two lines, you're including something that basically takes the reader, the interviewer, or the hiring manager, or the human resource professional, or the recruiter. It takes them away from your resume, right? You're including the link to your LinkedIn profile. And the question is, what are they going to find there that is not on your resume? Because to have a LinkedIn profile that matches 100% what they find in your resume, what's the purpose? Why would you send them there? Just to verify that there's another digital copy of your resume? It makes no sense. So your profile needs to be complete, needs to be at least an all-star profile, right? Like LinkedIn tells you whether it is an all-star profile or not. But an all-star profile is not an all-star profile, really. Your profile needs to be professional. It needs to stand out. It needs to be welcoming. It needs to have meat. It needs to be rich. It needs to have a friendly photo and a banner that helps you stand out from everybody else, that talks about your purpose or why you do what you do, or it needs to be inspiring or empowering in some way. The settings on your LinkedIn profile need to be right. So when someone comes and someone who's not connected with you, probably recruiters and hiring managers, they're not going to be connected with you. When they come and look at your profile, they probably want to see your photo, right? They're curious. I mean, every other profile has a photo. Why yours doesn't? Now you're planting seeds in their heads as to why doesn't this person put a photo? Well, it's not that. It's the settings that you have on your profile might actually prevent them from seeing your photo, right? The other question is, do you actually have any posts? Do you comment on other people's posts? Are you adding any value to the social media platform? Because again, to just look at your experience on LinkedIn and make sure that it matches with your resume, it's pointless. It adds no value. Just distracted the person who received your resume, and there's a chance that they may not get back to your resume now. They were unimpressed. So what does your activity on LinkedIn say about you? Are you building community? Are people following you? Are you taking a stance? Are you really, saying, I agree with this, or I disagree with this? Are you sharing respectfully your opinion? Are you sharing your experience? Are you writing your own posts and showing your LinkedIn authority or your authority in your domain? Are you getting recognition from others? Do you have recommendations from colleagues or former colleagues? How do you really stand out? Your experience copied from your resume over to your LinkedIn profile, that's a given. That's basic, okay? The question is, what else do you do with your LinkedIn profile? Because it's powerful, but you have to leverage it, right?
And to our listeners, Brian speaks from a point of real experience. I think he has pretty close to 2,000 posts that he's done himself. That's how you stand out. That's how you add value. Brian, any books or other resources that you would recommend to someone who's going through their own personal transition?
I'd like to say this. I've been completely transparent, open with you, Bob, and with everybody listening. I personally don't necessarily like to read that much. I like to learn from experience, and I like to learn from watching other people or discussing, having rich discussions. Maybe there's a reason why Clubhouse is dear to me as well, and why I've been able to build myself up on Clubhouse and through building meaningful relationships. That's how I learn, by asking questions, by sharing experiences and listening, but truly listening to others, not listening so that I can actually chime in and say what I want to say, but really listening to learn, to dissect, to understand, okay, what are they not saying there? What is it that they said but nobody else caught, right? I actually did this yesterday. Oh my God. Can I give you an example?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Has nothing to do with career development, but just to give an example, because it's so timely. I was on Clubhouse, and the topic was not something that I chose, okay? I just happened to see some people that I have affinity with, and I wanted to see what they were up to. And basically the topic was, if you have a loved one, a person that you love, who has been diagnosed with a critical illness, right? And the doctors believe that this person is not going to be able to survive. Will you actually make the call to end that person's life or not? Right? And there were different arguments, and people had different perspectives. And one of the things in the way that it was, the question was posed, the question was, if you interpreted that the person wanted to end their lives, right? If you interpreted, and this is the one thing that everybody else missed. It's such a small keyword, but so important, your interpretation. Right? And this is what I noticed. And this is when it was my turn to speak, this is what I brought to everybody's attention. Do you guys realize that this is your interpretation? If the person who is critically ill cannot speak, is maybe like in a coma or is like whatever, how can you make the decision to end that person's life if it is just your interpretation? What if it was wrong? And the interesting thing about this is that the person who was hosting the room said, I actually had a patient 16 years ago who was diagnosed with a critical illness, and she was going to live just for 2 months. And it's been 16 years and she's still alive, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a chance that maybe the doctors misdiagnose, they confuse the patient. There's a miracle maybe. Do you believe in miracles? That's another question, right? So anyway, what I wanted to showcase about this is, if you truly want to stand out, don't just look for or don't pay attention to what they're showing you, but think critically. Think about what they are not telling you. During an interview, it's very easy to just nod your head and agree with whatever it is that they are saying. But do you have the guts? I'm going to use that word. Do you have the guts? Do you have the courage to point out the things that they are not saying to you, or to disagree, or to point out and be like, hey, I've done this in the past and it actually didn't work, right? What you think about this, that case study that you're asking me, no, actually that I've tried it in the past. It actually doesn't work. Let me tell you why. And I will walk you through the way that we implemented that and why it didn't work, right? They want someone who really will stand up to what they believe in.
Brian, to kind of wrap things up today, if our listeners only remember 3 things as they go through their personal transition, what are those 3 things that you want them to take with them from your presentation today?
Very simple. They're all connected. Recognize what you're struggling with. I mean, there's the definition of insanity, right? It's doing the exact same thing over and over and over, expecting different results. There are people who are applying to jobs, and they are not getting any interviews after sending 100 applications, and they don't know why, and they just keep on doing the exact same thing. Or they're going to interviews and they're not getting the job offers, and they just keep on doing the same thing. Recognize what you're struggling with first, right? And or go to someone who can actually recognize it for you and who can actually help you. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to reach out for help. It's super, super important that if you're struggling with something, that you recognize that there's someone who out there who specializes in whatever it is that you're struggling with. When you are ill, you go to the doctor. When you're not getting job offers, you're going to someone who can actually help you learn why you're not getting those job offers, how to stand up, and build meaningful relationships. And this is important for every walk in life, not just for during the interview, but everywhere in life. Even like, look at Bob and I. I mean, we didn't know each other even more than 4 days ago. We connected. We are building a relationship, meaningful relationship, where we actually got to care for each other, to learn about each other's history, where we're coming from. And this is not going to just end in a podcast. It will continue. Build a relationship with a stranger, with someone on the other side of the counter at coffee shop, or with a waiter or a waitress. Build meaningful relationships. Treat people like real human beings and stop putting people on a pedestal. Your interviewer is not above you. Your interviewer recognizes that they were once sitting on your same side of the table. So don't put people on a pedestal. Treat people at your same level with respect always, of course, but treat people like human beings and you will be respected and appreciated.
Brian, I know that I can speak for the listeners. I've done this transition management for almost 30 years. And there were things today that I learned from your experiences and thoughts. So I thank you. I thank you for caring and sharing. And I thank you for being a part of the journey of transition management. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it immensely.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.